Oh fuck. No. Fuck, I have to test the sound. Let's see. If I clap, I should have good sound sync. The sound. Let's see. If I clap, I should have good sound sync. Oh, that's perfect. All right. Sound sync is perfect. Let's go ahead. So, this video is going to be about feminism, out of all subjects. And it's going to be about the problems that I see with feminism. And we're going to cover two of the main problems. I think that's all we have time for in this video. So, I think that one of the biggest weaknesses with feminism today is when it starts hating men and blaming all the difficulties that women are subjected to on men. Such sentiments, along with weak victim mentality, is reason enough for some women, and I think more will follow their footsteps, to actually exit feminism. Women who have called themselves feminists before exit feminism because they just don't agree with it anymore. They realize that all the man hating is actually detrimental to their relationships with men, and so they simply leave. A very good viewpoint when it comes to addressing anything you hate comes from a guy called Louis Rossmann. He's available here on YouTube. And he tells a story about his one of his acquaintances was an old guy, 77 years old, and he would tell Louis, you hate nothing, you just intentionally dislike it. And I think it applies to feminists as much as it applies to all of us. If we hate something, it basically means that we intentionally dislike it. Today, feminism is failing miserably at presenting a balanced viewpoint on gender dynamics and gender issues in society, causing what I believe is more harm than good. More and more people who are in the public light realize that it's a dangerous direction that feminism is heading in. And most importantly, it is quite useful to look at the women who have previously called themselves feminists, but who have since stepped out of that ideology, and who are telling their stories for everybody to freely take part in and hear and experience. I can currently count these women on perhaps just one hand, but more and more are sort of, I can see more and more of them coming forward, and I can definitely see some recurring patterns in why they actually have left feminism. And the recurring patterns are just these two reasons: hating men, which they don't agree with, and the victim mentality, which they think weakens them, so they leave. Edwina Curry has a very interesting speech that summarizes these two particular points. I will play this speech at the end of this video, so if you want to see it, you can go to the end of the video, or you can just continue listening and we'll get to it. Another woman on the opposing side of feminism that I think really stands out is Daisy Cousins. It's a relevant personality on YouTube. She does many videos on various subjects, but I think one of the subjects that she has the best content on is in fact feminism, because she used to be a feminist and she left feminism, and she was actually attacked by feminists for saying things like, don't be a victim, just don't be. And feminists find that very insulting in some way, for some reason. And Daisy explains this very well in one of her videos, which she has done on the subject of why feminists in Australia hate her. And she even dares to call Donald Trump Uncle Donnie to show her support for him, which is infuriating to the leftist women who cannot imagine that the phrase like grab them by the pussy can actually mean something positive, depending on the context. For example, if you're in a relationship with someone, it can actually be something sexy. They cannot imagine that. The leftists, they cannot fathom that such a strong attraction can even exist, because men are not really attracted to them, since they hate men, and it's kind of boring and rather like unfulfilling to be in a relationship with somebody that hates you. Why would anybody want to do that? The other very good woman that is sharing a lot of very rational views on feminism, her name is Christina Hoff Sommers. She runs the show Factual Feminist on YouTube. And seemingly a feminist, she's taking a highly rational approach, and she denounces the delusional ideas that some feminists actually consider the truth. She has this very loving attitude towards feminism. She kind of like, it almost feels that she sees feminists as these lost souls that she has to rescue. So she's very loving towards them, and she just sort of enlightens them to see the truth, to see a better future outside of feminism. And she has this video called Fainting Couch Feminists, which I think you should really check out. I will show some some parts of this video later in this video. And if you like this video so far, subscribe to my channel and you'll see more videos. I think there is a responsibility on the part of both genders to bring moderation into the process of man-woman interactions. You cannot expect women to be completely passive and men automatically knowing what the woman finds to be okay and what she does not find to be okay. Christina Hoff Sommers is one woman that brings a substantial counterbalance to the world of feminism. And she talks a lot about many of these subjects which relate to Me Too movement, which relate to sexism at work, which relate to all of these most recent issues that have been floating up in the area of feminism, which Daisy, by the way, thinks is just feminists finding new excuses, new things to complain about. But you can make your own opinion, make up your own mind on that, what you think makes most sense. The third woman I would like to mention, she's actually from Sweden, and she used to be a feminist before, but she has since left feminism, and she goes under the YouTube name of Jellybean. And since she's from Sweden, her opinions are actually highly relevant to the Swedish landscape of feminism. So if you are living in Sweden, you would find her videos very highly relevant to what is happening in Sweden. And she made a video about one of the most well-known Swedish feminists by the name of Linnea Claesson, who is rather looked down upon, I would say, in like among smart people, but nonetheless she has a very vibrant following that lifts her to the skies and really looks up to her. And this following is pretty happy to blame all men for any problem in the world, which is rather pathetic, but you know, after all, not many women have a clear view of what Linnea Claesson actually stands for. It's not very pretty, even though her hair looks quite colorful. Another woman who is on the side of bringing rationality to feminism is a girl called Cassie J. She is the creator of the movie The Red Pill. Now, I've only seen sporadic references to this movie, but based on what I've heard so far, I really would like to watch it. I haven't watched it yet, but it seems like the kind of movie that brings a balanced perspective, where they interview both sides. She has been talking to both the men's rights movements and the feminist movements, and she was kind of putting it together into one documentary, which she has called The Red Pill. And based on what she has been telling about that movie, I definitely think that it's worth checking out, but I haven't had time to check it out yet before making this video. So I will kind of put her on the list as a very possible candidate. I think she has a rational view on things, but I cannot really at this point tell for sure. So, today we are past the second wave and the third wave of feminism. Today we have what we can best describe as the fourth wave feminism, which was created very recently in this social media space, and it has created Me Too. And at the core, it may make a lot of sense. The Me Too movement, but I think that also many women agree, especially rational women, they agree that Me Too has been taking sort of too far, and has possibly devolved into something more similar to a witch hunt. And this is something that Christina Hoff Sommers brings up in her video, which is called Me Too Movement or Witch Hunt. Now, I can totally understand that not many girls would actually enjoy having an erect dick of their boss rubbed against their asshole while they're making coffee at work. But in terms of the way that this type of feminism tries to solve this type of problem, does in fact do more harm than good. The main target of the fourth wave feminism seems to be men's utter clumsiness when it comes to approaching women. And I think that after all, men do have to learn that. It is something that every guy has to learn over time. It is something that is not that is not being sort of actively taught. So I think that a lot of men, even the ones that are doing well academically, they may not actually have that much experience. Maybe they're living in like a relationship, in a marriage where they have been married for many years, and they don't have really the experience to kind of go out there and maybe meet women and connect with them and actually have conversations and maybe kind of openly, or more like taking this approach of sort of having things naturally happen, and instead they end up doing things that are inappropriate, like rubbing their dick against a coworker, for example. And I don't think it's not like blaming men for their own clumsiness is going to make things better for the women. I think men will remain just as clumsy, and probably even more so if women start assuming that men are out to hurt them in every possible way, because such an attitude is actually quite likely to make things worse, because it is an antagonistic attitude towards men, and if there is anything that is irritating to a man is being rejected by a woman, and I think that many men cannot take this well. So you can sort of deduce from that it's even hard for women to say no when they're out at the bar, because there is this possibility that the guy is going to become violent and maybe stalk them or like do something else that they wouldn't enjoy. So women are forced to kind of come up with more elaborate strategies instead of saying no, and it just becomes harder for women. And the less practice men get in actually interacting with women, possibly because women kind of get this attitude that they're antagonistic towards men. They think that men just want to hurt them or like blame them or like shame them or whatever, and it can actually in the long term kind of lead to this situation where men actually become even more frustrated, which is going to be worse for women. But I don't think they understand that. Otherwise they wouldn't be subscribing to feminism as it is today. And I think that instead of actually blaming themselves for having their heads so far up their asses and have not been actually making an effort to teach men how to approach women and get laid, clumsiness combined with a desire to get laid produces the kind of men that feminists like to call assholes. And it is not going to make things better to completely ignore the reasons for the problem by trying to treat it as a consequence instead of actually focusing on the problem itself. So in reality, what feminism creates ends up meaning that the men we would call pickup artists do infinitely more good for women when it comes to stopping any kind of sexism than any average feminist. And that is provided, of course, that they don't trick women into having sex. But I think that most pickup artists that have been around for a while, they kind of gravitate more towards the honest and open approach rather than the trickery approach. But in the end, they actually end up doing more good for women in general by teaching men how to approach women and how to get laid, and how to handle all of these situations, which actually makes men more calm and more loving towards women, and they do more good than any average feminist that hates men and just complains about men being the cause of all problems. So the fact that so many women find themselves disenchanted by the mainstream feminism is quite alarming, and I think that all of us should see that fact as a problem. This concerns both women and men. We need more women who are really standing up for their fellow women, but not doing so at the expense of men, because that is rather short-sighted and only puts them in the same category as the men who hate women. Just because they maybe have not had real sex for 3 years, or they just want to get back at men or women for denying them what they consider to be their dutiful right, which is rather ridiculous. And I think that feminists put themselves into the same category as the men who would sort of hate women for not giving them sex, and just because they expect the woman to give them sex or something like that. I think that feminists would kind of look down on such men, and yet they kind of make themselves the female version of such men when they hate men. And if you're a man choosing to hate women, then it's not like you're going to have more sex because of that. At least not with women. And maybe you can have some kind of sex, but that's about as high as you can aim if you hate women. It's almost certainly not going to be the intimate and loving kind of sex that most of us want. which does require you to actually like women. And what I'm trying to say is that it's also the same way for women. Like, if women like men and not hate them, then also the sex gets better. I think that the women that blame all men for all the problems that they have in their lives are generally quite depressing to be around. They're very bad at giving any kind of love or affection because they innermostly simply just hate men, and it does not matter to them who you are or what you think. They just automatically hate you just because you're a man, or just because you are a right-wing woman like Daisy Cousins. And if you're a good man, let's say you're kind of good in the sense that you're really open to discussion, then they'll hate you anyway because you're a man, because they hate all men. And this simply backfires at them in the end, because it kind of ensures that they remain alone and unhappy, and also more bitter towards all men. So when women start looking up to feminists who hate all men, women actually are entering into a way of thinking that is detrimental to their own well-being. Not just as individuals, but also as a group. Because the thinking spreads, and when one woman is exposed to this kind of toxic thinking that hates all men, wants to dismantle the patriarchy, then it spreads, and it makes the lives of other women miserable as well. But luckily we do have women that do go out of their way and do actually promote reasonable viewpoints on gender interaction, which are truly inclusive of both genders. Women like Christina Hoff, who lift up the facts about common misconceptions in feminism, and women like Daisy Cousins, who really appreciate masculinity and yet also remain strong in their own femininity, which I think is important. It's important to not forget that we should also celebrate women's femininity, because that's what we are attracted to. And I think that women should do the same if they want to achieve any kind of gender equality. They should celebrate men's masculinity and not look down on it. And it usually does require a rather strong woman to stand up against these common ideas that are perpetuated in feminism, especially to do so publicly, because of all the weaker women, all of them will try to eat this woman alive. They will bicker at her like piranhas on a piece of meat, and they will try to suffocate her with 1,000 cuts. And these piranhas, they also then identify themselves as feminists, which is rather hypocritical in the end, because they cannot promote the equality for all women and sort of taking care of making sure that women have their voice heard, and then they bicker at a woman who disagrees with them. Doesn't make any sense to me. This is something that we need to be aware of, and we need to find and promote the women that do in fact understand the bigger picture and don't hold grudges indiscriminately against all men. Women who bring out a picture that is balanced and truthful. Such women are few and sometimes far apart. The large majority of women maybe don't really care about the subject, so they just remain quiet, which makes also the public scene shift disproportionately towards the leftist victimhood variant of feminism, which is rather rotten at the core, and I don't believe it should be glorified. And it is rather pathetic to start channels on Instagram called Assholes Online, which only draw attention to the bad things that are out there. But the world is rather varied, and there are both bad things and good things. Why not focus on good things instead of just focusing on the bad things? Why not focus on the things that represent how you want the world to be? So I think the women worth promoting and lifting out of the unknown are the ones who have a reasonable view of both sides, who do not shame one side just because they feel victimized, who do not accept all the delusions of the other side just because they do not have a spine of their own to think for themselves. The ones worth promoting are the ones who are determined to empower women without promoting a hatred towards men. It is one thing to be supportive of individual achievement, of independence for women, personal autonomy and general self-actualization, without doing so at the expense of anybody else, which usually seems to be men in gender-related contexts. And it is a completely different thing to try to further the interests of one half of the population at the expense of the other. I think that's wrong. And the reasonable women, they do agree with this. The women who refuse to be part of what Daisy calls the delusional world of identity politics are always worth my respect. I think identity politics, we can define the identity politics as kind of the agenda that aims to prioritize the concerns of one group at the expense of the other, which I think is detrimental. It's not the most constructive solution to the problem that feminists face. Feminism is not an exception to being subjected to this kind of identity politics, and it's in fact identity politics are very prevalent in feminism, which is why we also have all of these problems, where we have the one group kind of trying to achieve their ends at the expense of all men, when in fact they should be happy that men do exist, and they should be more acceptant towards men, because after all, men are one of the reasons why they exist, and also women are one of the reasons that men exist, because that's just the way it is. It's important to remember the basics of how things sort of start and evolve in the process of evolution. And we have also seen people who call themselves feminists block somebody like Warren Farrell, who actually has some valid points to say in his talks. I don't think he maybe has, like, all of his points maybe don't make that much sense, but he does have a lot of valid points. And they have been blocking him and his speeches at universities under the outrageous pretext that he somehow is supporting like date rapes and whatnot. If that's not delusional, I don't know what is, because he is very much for women. He's actually been a feminist before. He has actually worked in a feminist organization, but he became disillusioned with the whole philosophy of feminism. And he realized that it is necessary to see both sides of the picture in order to have a truthful representation of reality. For some reason, feminists are afraid of him. I don't know, maybe because he burst too many of their bubbles, that they're delusional bubbles. Of course, Warren Farrell is an example of a man standing up against the problems of feminism for pretty much the same reasons as the women that become disillusioned with feminism. But of course, it's never as effective as having a woman that comes from feminism background stand up and actually tell everybody else what the problem is with feminism. That is much more powerful, and it's also much more inspiring to other women because they can relate more. So therefore, I think it's important to really give some attention to this, to the women that actually do promote this rational views of feminism, and actually maybe even give them a little bit more attention than to the guys that do the same, because guys don't have the same effect on other women who are currently subscribing to the feminist ideology. So with regards to that, I would like to suggest that if you know more women that belong to this category of the rational ex-feminists, then do post them in my Discord. I have created extra channel for politics. I've set up different categories, so just feel free to post it in the politics category. It's a rather new Discord, so just feel free to fill it up with content. So coming to the conclusion, if women really are interested in battling sexist, inappropriate approaches at work or any other aspect of the dynamic between men and women, then a much better approach would be to focus not on the symptoms of the problem, but on the causes. And the causes can be something as simple as men simply be wired biologically to kind of corner women and fuck them. It takes a strong woman to resist and to actually be able to say no, and to do so effectively, because say no, as I stated earlier, it may not always be the best strategy, and this is something I based on discussions with a girl that was really good at kind of explaining this fact, and I have seen it also myself, but it never came to the forefront of my mind to kind of like bring it up, because I haven't been seeing it as such a big issue, but apparently it can be a very big issue, and it does make sense when you think about it, because guys do get upset, guys do get angry when they hear a no, and that is problematic. That is problematic for women. But instead of blaming men for their behavior, I think a much more constructive strategy is for women to do more things about it in their everyday lives. I think that kind of empowering is good, but it has to be directed properly against the actual inappropriate behavior, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody can do something inappropriate just because they kind of haven't really found their way, but in the end, I think that it is very important for every person. It doesn't matter if this is a man or a woman or a child or whatever. It's very important for every person to be able to say what they are not willing to do, and to do so in a very clear manner, which perhaps doesn't infuriate the other person, but more like, just live with it. No is a no. And how to do that I think would require like a more in-depth video on how women can stand their interests without doing so at the expense of men, because the concept itself is rather self-evident. If you don't like some person, or if another person doesn't like you, then it's like we are not supposed to like everybody, and we don't like everybody, and that is just natural. We don't feel attracted to everybody. We don't feel like we want to have sex with everybody, and just realizing that fact and sort of trying to kind of live with it and find better ways, approach maybe other women for men, and women to be able to tell a man that that's just the way it is. That is some very starting, like, little grassroots ideas of how women can actually handle such situations, which I think is 100 times better than engaging in the victim mentality, where women instead blame men for their behavior, for their inappropriate approaches, and they blame men, but without doing something about it themselves, like without looking to learn maybe how to better say no. If you think that you shouldn't have to do that, you're kind of giving up your responsibility, like your end of the stick, because you should be able to say no matter who approaches you. That does take a lot of practice. It does take a lot of internal work. It does take a lot of personal development, but that's just the way it is. You have to take responsibility for your side, and you should be able to push a man away, no matter who that guy is, and to do so in your female way. So for a man it might be something very physical, but for a woman it's more of a conversation, and more these soft approaches in sort of outwitting men, which women do all the time. And the women that are good at that, they can sort of deflect any kind of unwanted interaction fairly easily. So I think it will be very beneficial for women to become better at those things and to learn from women who are good at that. So that pretty much summarizes what I currently have to say about feminism, and this is a video directed at feminism as it is today. As I said earlier, if you want to discuss any of this content, feel free to join my Discord and post links in the politics section, and post any of your whatever you want to post. Primarily, I'm interested in finding more women who have been disenchanted with feminism and who have good ideas to share. And so I think that the most reasonable next step right now is to just have a look at some of the videos that I've been mentioning throughout this conversation. And we can start with We Are Not All Feminists by Edwina Curry.
So just saying there should be equality under the law. And that is an argument that I have made in all sorts of other fields ever since. There should be equality under the law. Those who argue for discrimination have got to make the argument about why it is a good thing. And in that sense, therefore, I stand for equality, but I'm not a feminist, and I do not think that the ways of feminism, the arguments of feminism, are the way forward. I actually object to feminism, Madam President, on two main areas. One is cultural, and one is practical. Now, the cultural side. Well, we've heard a little bit of this tonight. You see, the problem with the kind of feminism that we used to hear back in the 60s and the 70s and many years since, the kind of feminism actually has one very big problem for a woman like me. It's the kind of feminism that actually hates men. And I have a problem with that, because, especially on Valentine's Day, I don't hate men. I love men. And I learned to love them here, in this city. I love men, and I'm one of the vast majority of women that love men, and that I really don't want to see them in any way being discriminated against. And there's something also, I've listened to
that's
Cindy,
pretty
I've
reasonable.
not heard speak before, with greatest interest. But again,
How can you disagree with that?
That I heard when I went to see the vagina monologues and came out thinking, that is not about me.
Yeah.
What it excludes, I think, and it's a cultural thing.
If you want to watch this video, you can just look it up. The next one is this one from Daisy Cousins, which I think is a very, very good summary of her experiences as she was kind of promoting more liberal views and promoting the views that actually aim at saying that women do have responsibility for their own well-being. So she's basically telling women that, don't be a victim, stand up for yourself.
Women in the Western world have, by law, every opportunity available to men. We benefit from a cultural disdain for and a court system that punishes rape, sexual harassment, wage disparity, gender discrimination, and other atrocities. However, we have been unable to enjoy it because a bunch of self-absorbed middle-class malcontents are running around telling us how terrible we should think our lives are. It's very irritating. Feminists have quite literally run out of things to complain about, which, in the fight for women's equality, would seem a good thing, you would have thought. But rather than celebrating
that certainly does seem to be the case.
Rewards, feminists keep inventing new things to whine about. If they didn't, not only would they be facing a purposeless existence, they would go out of business. Modern feminism is, amongst other things, a money-making exercise. And chillingly, the only way to profit is to make other women feel really, really terrible about themselves. Feminists do this by telling outright lies, like insisting that even though it has been illegal for decades to pay women less than men for the same work.
Yeah, she's pretty good. If you want to really dive into her stuff, you can always find her here on YouTube. Next, this is mostly a humor thing. I don't think we have too much time to look at this. Doesn't really have much content, but still quite interesting. Certain parts of it, at least.
Being online gets harassed, right? Like, we kind of buckle down and we expect it, which is such a horrible place to be. And then when I launched a Kickstarter to fund a series of videos that would look at women in video games is when my life completely changed. And I had a massive cybermob come after me, and they have still been after me for the last 5 years. And I think intersectionality is a really important point here because...
Yeah. So she mentions this guy that has been making videos that she doesn't really like. I just had to look that guy up.
If you Google my name on YouTube, you get shitheads like this dude who are making these dumbass
Shitheads like this dude. Yeah. Look up this dude. Anyway. This is a very good talk. This is a series called Factual Feminist.
Couch feminists are taking over.
Which is very insightful.
And their own professors find them scary. That's coming up next on The Factual Feminist. Consider what happened to Professor Laura Kipnis at Northwestern University.
This is rather alarming.
She wrote an essay making light of trigger warnings and safe spacers. Well, 2 graduate students found her views terrifying, and they filed Title IX harassment charges against her. And her university, apparently intimidated by these grad students, took the charges seriously. The university carried out a formal investigation of the professor.
And this is not the first time something like this happens. It's like it's alarming that it even happens at all. And Jordan Peterson had to face very similar kind of allegations. But that's a different story. You can look up Jordan Peterson if you want.
Her offending essay. Well, Title IX was once a common sense law about gender fairness in education. Today, it's being weaponized for use by fainting couch feminists who see the world as a battle between fragile maidens and evil predators.
Fainting couch. This is a fainting couch. It looks like a kind of a sex,
they terrify him, as he explained,
like a sex furniture, and it was actually used for like. The way I understand it, the woman would just lay here and she would get massaged in her vagina, and it was designed to kind of be nice to sit on. But I don't know much about the fainting couches. I think it's a funny little piece of furniture.
Correct exaggerated victim statistics. Now, in the past, activist students who disagreed with me came to my lectures to spar and debate. Well, today they issue trigger warnings and accuse me of giving them PTSD. At both Oberlin and Georgetown, activists organized safe spaces where students could flee if they were panicked by my arguments.
Seriously.
And at Oberlin, 35 students and a therapy dog sought refuge in a safe room. And I feel badly about triggering a dog. But still, there were paranoid flyers festooned on the walls. The first 3 rows of the lecture hall were filled with students who'd put duct tape, red duct tape, on their mouths. They sat there as I spoke. At Georgetown, the editorial board of the school newspaper.
It's like you almost cannot believe that this kind of thing happens. And I hope it doesn't happen. I hope this is just a sort of. I hope this is just entertainment video that's about things that never happen. So I don't want to believe that that kind of shit happens.
Creating safe space for survivors. Imagine being an untenured professor at Georgetown. By the way, officials at both Oberlin and Georgetown were so alarmed by the frantic Facebook postings that were there before my visit to campus, they assigned armed guards to protect me from the safe spacers.
Yeah.
Well, at this moment, fainting couchers and the safe spacers are everywhere on college campuses, and they're.
Yeah, and this is a recurring story with feminists in general. Like, they're very easily offended by something that goes against their viewpoint, and kind of any ideology that feels easily offended by somebody who proposes an opposing viewpoint is kind of alarming. It kind of points at the fact that the ideology is completely empty on the inside, that it's completely devoid of any useful content and crumbles easily at the sign of very minor opposition. So, yeah. She has another video that was very good, that I thought was very good.
The Me Too awakening is an historic moment. It has the potential to correct long-tolerated abuses and to lead to a new era of understanding.
Yeah, that's the good part of Me Too. But then, like, please, the way that they
allow it to be hijacked by delusions of gender Armageddon. That's coming up next on The Factual Feminist. Harper's Bazaar, a popular fashion magazine, recently ran an article about the notorious date between Aziz Ansari and an anonymous woman known as Grace.
And they're always anonymous, by the way.
Why didn't Grace just leave?
They're always anonymous. They're like, they're such fucking bullshitters. They can't even like put their name on their on what they say.
Unwanted sex on dates because, the article claims, women are afraid men will murder them. Well, the author, Me Too activist Jennifer Wright,
well, there is actually some truth to that.
Feminist adage from novelist Margaret Atwood: "Men are afraid women will laugh at them."
The fears could be actually prevalent,
Wright conjures alarming statistics to justify the fear. For example, that
statistically maybe it's not the case, but it doesn't really make the fears less prevalent amongst
the author
women.
apparently didn't check the source. According to the Justice Department, approximately 30% of homicidal partners are female, 70% male. Now, all of these deaths are tragic, but they do little to support Wright's fears. There are more men who kill women than vice versa, but that's because men are more likely to kill, period. And for the most part, they kill other men. Nearly 80% of murder victims are men. The odds of a woman being killed on her date are infinitesimally small. but the odds that baseless attacks on men will weaken a great movement are high. If today's sexual reckoning is to achieve lasting progress, it must be a human undertaking. It's something men and women must work on together. We need to dispense
Very well
with
said.
men want to kill
I
us.
totally
fantasies.
agree.
We're not in a war against half the human race. Guilt by association is wrong. And so for that matter is innocence by association, which is the premise behind the slogan, "Believe all women." Women, like men, are fallible beings. Even the feminist standard bearer Margaret Atwood acknowledged this in a recent article on the excesses of Me Too.
Yeah.
My fundamental position, Atwood said, is that women are human beings with a full range of saintly and demonic behaviors this entails, including criminal ones. They are not angels, incapable of wrongdoing. I think her words should be etched in stone. The factual feminist is also concerned about...
So she's very good. She's very, very good at being rational about this subject. So check out her videos. Very good videos. Then next we have the Swedish girl. Pretty much starting out, and she's also been a feminist. She has stepped out of it, and she kind of realized all the bullshit. So, but she talks in Swedish. So if you're not Swedish talking, then you probably would not understand what she's saying. But if you are from Sweden, then sure, check out her videos. Very, very good. Very well said in many videos. Very good ideas.
Här är Frans Borséns tweet. Lämna denna utan kommentar och backar sakta undan. Och så är det en bild på det här. European Commission. Och så står det här väldigt tydligt att the biographies were sent by the speakers. Det är alltså Linnea Claesson som själv har skrivit detta. Hon skriver: Linnea Claesson is human rights activist, feminist, blah 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 blah. And then på slutet så skriver hon: She has also played an important part in pushing the Swedish government and parliament towards a more equal society. Skojar du?
Yeah.
Hör ni hur jävla självgott det är? Och jag
yeah, we already know that.
Senast
so,
som Linnea Claesson gjorde någonting.
But good that you bring it up, of course.
Svensk.
Now the next one is, by the way, yeah, and she's called Jellybean on YouTube. You can check it out. The next one is the Warren Farrell. Some people think that like people who go to his lectures are pathetic, but I think it's more reasonable to perhaps say that people that go to his lectures want to learn, and they may be in rather pathetic situations, but he does have some good things to say. And I wouldn't judge him by the followers that he attracts. It's more like, you know, I look at his ideas and I see if I agree with any of them, and I think some of his ideas are very good.
Well, we're going to have to hook back up again very soon, Doctor. We're already almost 12 minutes in, and I could keep on going for the next 2 hours. It's very, very interesting, and I think that society needs to hear what you have to say. The name of the book is called The Boy Crisis. His name is Dr. Warren Farrell, Farrell, PhD. He's written this book. It's been out for about 10 or 11 months. Go and get it right now. He's written several other books as well. I really appreciate the time and the knowledge. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He kind of gets a little bit apocalyptic with his ideas, but, you know, just kind of take them as they are. Let's see, did I just yeah, I think I just, let's see,
I was first to
did I just click away the video?
Facebook, Twitter. Toxic masculinity haters. Is this what they want? Because again, you're right.
It is a long video. I think he's still worth checking out. So yeah, that was all for this video. If you want to subscribe, just go ahead, and I'm gonna go and make sure that my eyes don't get too dry, and I need to go and I need to really get some sleep right now because it's getting late, and I should be getting enough sleep so that I work more effectively and do better videos and create better PCBs and write better code. So have a good night and bye. Let's see here.